So friends, for today demo topic is using DAX nested functions. Today we will work with DAX nested functions in transaction table. So you can see it is possible for us using DAX function in another DAX function. We will now explore how we can call any if function inside an if function for this nested if statement. We will make use of transactions table which we have previously loaded and effectively serve as fact that in the schema containing customer broadcast information and transactions table here. In the transaction table, there are number of continuous columns. We can see here there are number of continuous column such as total amount, and there are also columns containing categorical data such as store type, where there are four different categories of a store. Now, in many instances, it may help you to convert the numeric and continuous values into categorical or discrete data. As an example, let's look at the total amount column. This is of course include a whole host of values in a range and even among the values which we can see in the view. You will see there are some transactions where the amount is 7300 or more than 7000, and other it is as low as 450, 355. Now what if your analysis is not quite important as what the exact amount for each transaction, but it is more relevant if you know if certain transaction happens to be of high value and low value or somewhere in the middle. Well, we will now make use of nested if statement or if function to transform this data from continuous to discrete form. For that, we will create a new column transaction and new column in transactions table. Column, it will create a new column and it will take few seconds. Before we proceed, let me remind you that we have covered how to transform a continuous column into discrete one. So what we'll do now, we will, yes, it's created, and a new measure will be there. So what we'll do, we will give the name to it total amount groups. Now we will go to the here we can see short one column by content of another, it's represent, and it create a new group to combine multiple values into one, and it's for write a DAX expression that creates a new column in selected table, calculate values for each row. So these all are available in top ribbon here, and which allow us to define different groups in the table based on a value in a specific column. Now that is exactly what we are going to do with nested if function, and the goal is to simply understand how nested function in Power BI works. If we click here, we can have some another options too. Yes, it's added here. It has been added total amount groups. So what we will do, total amount groups, I will put it the name of total amount groups. First, just need to delete here. So total amount groups, if I am doing it 1. So what we need to do, we need to use if statement. We need to use here if condition, then yes. We will use if function for it, and if, as we are already familiar with the syntax of a logical test, result true, result false. So if transactions, we are using transactions table, transactions total amount, this is the total amount, yes, total amount is greater than or equal to is greater than or equal to some specific value on which we want to define it. If transactions total amount is greater than or equal to 2000, then this value should be low. Else we will use another if statement here. If same table, we will use if transactions total amount is greater than amount is greater than 2000, and we will use, in order to perform logical AND operation, we are using double AND symbol, and transactions table, we are using again transactions total amount is less than or equal to 6000. It should be medium, else it should. So total amount group 7. So if you just hit enter, now it will process, it will work and will take few moments. And here we have just put it value 20,000. What we will do now? We can see all values are less than 20,000. We will convert it to 2000. So after changing, if we hit enter, you can see here new column has been created and we can explain the value of new column. So first few values are high which have more than 7,000 values which have more than 6,000. Few are medium and there are various values which are according to the value we set here in nested if function are low. So this is how we can cast out a numerical column into categorical and discrete form and we can even group the data. So nested if can also be used if the categorization is relatively simple. Let's answer the question how many exactly these grouping are really useful. Well, for that let's just see if you want to focus on one set of transactions representing the high value one. Well, looking at this data table, we can simply apply a filter. So what we will do here, we will just select a filter. What we can do, we will uncheck all and we will just have value high, which we have set the value high according to our requirement. So if we set value high here and we apply a filter, then here we just have the value transactions and while the bottom of window we can see how much rows are there. So we can see out of 23,000 plus rows there are only 1,000 plus rows are there in of original data set. So you can see by scroll along in the way we can see that total profiling of groups column which will help us better understand the contents of our table. Now we will again modify the filter little bit. We just stick with low value and what we will do for this, we will go here and we will uncheck this high and we will go with low value. As we hit enter OK, there are more almost 12,000 rows which are falls in the categories of low. So we have an idea of that majority of row in our transaction table represent low level of transaction. At least the identification of our data level low which we have set it here. As a final sanity check, let's bring up the filter once again so the only medium value transactions should be appear. We will do once again modification and we will click on medium value. So as we hit enter, you can see there are 10,000 plus rows are there which are in the category of medium value. So if we sum up all three categories medium, low and high, it will show the value 23053 rows which is there. So this is how column profiling help us to understand the data, and in this case it's clearly point out that these fractions of data points to high value transactions. Now it's possible for us to generate a visualization which display count of rows for each of these grouping we just defined. So the end users of our report have an idea of how the total amount of transactions are split up. Alternatively, we as data analysts can think of as the data helping us to decide what visualization may be included in first place. So we can try to categorize based on grouping we define. So do we need grouping and what kind of chart should be presented in this group? We can now familiar how to use nested if function in DAX. So this is how nested if works in DAX. Thank you for watching my video.